Welcome back, everybody. This is Tenta Outdoors. My name's Alan. I'm the Season 10 winner of Alone. In this video, I'm going to be talking about and teaching the 3 knots that were instrumental to my success on this season of Alone. Stick around. We're doing it right now. I need to do a shout out and a thank you to my sister-in-law, Kathy, who designed the Tenta Outdoors logo. So Kathy makes little felt books. Her account is Kathy and Flick on Etsy. And she made this felt book for me after my experience out there. Check it out. So inside, there's several little critters that you can hide in various pages of the book. Kids love this stuff. So you hide it in different spots and they have to kind of go through and find it each time they read it. There's my shelter, my fire pit, and my tripod. Kathy, thank you so much for designing my logo. The first knot we're going to learn today was by far my favorite and probably the knot I used the most while I was out there. The name of this knot is called the Canadian Jam Knot. And it's not because I'm Canadian that I like it, it's because it's an awesome knot. So the cordage that I've found works the best for tying the Canadian Jam Knot is the outer sheath of paracord. So on the show, if you remember, I pulled out the inner strands of the paracord, like so. Obviously in longer pieces, and I constructed my gill net out of this. So I was left with a whole bunch of sheath rope like this. And what's good about the outer sheath of paracord, it cinches down incredibly tightly. And this is still very strong, but if you use the outer strands of paracord, that knot will not slip and it'll cinch down extremely tightly. So the first thing I used the Canadian Jam Knot for on the show was when I was setting my gill net. I had 2 long trees that I had to attach together to get my net out further enough into the water where it was deep. So I used the jam knot in that situation. And what's also nice about the jam knot is that it doesn't take a lot of rope. There's almost no waste to it at all, and it's only one wrap around whatever you're tying. So I had 2 trees, and I overlapped them like so, and I used the Canadian Jam Knot to cinch them together. I think I did one here, one here, one here, and one here, and it worked perfectly. It never broke, it never loosened, and it held those 2 trees together even through some really rough water. So the second application of the Canadian Jam Knot during my experience was in the construction of my shelter door. Remember, you're going to use this knot when you want to cinch something down really, really tightly and hold 2 objects together. The third application of this knot during the show was in the construction of my bed. I also used the jam knot when I was building my snowshoes, the same sort of principle I used when I built the shelter door. I also used the jam knot to do cross struts on my teepee to add strength, and so I could hang things off it while I was inside the teepee. Okay, for the Canadian Jam Knot, we're going to simulate when I tied those 2 trees together to set my gill net. So these 2 pieces of bamboo here are simulating the 2 trees when I set my gill net. So I have my piece of paracord here. This is just the sheath, don't forget. Now the first thing you're going to do, you're going to tie an overhand knot in the end of one piece of your rope, just like so, okay? Now once I've got this overhand knot done, I'm going to go down a little bit, an inch or so, and I'm just going to do a simple overhand knot like so. Just a loop, okay? So this is how you prepare your jam knot. You've got the locking jam knot at the top and just like a half hitch loop here. So we're going to wrap it around what we want to tie it around. Basically this knot consists of 3 half hitch knots. We're going to put the other end, once I've wrapped it around my whatever I want to cinch together, I put it through that loop, and I'm just going to ratchet it back and forth until that jam knot I tied in the end jams tightly. That's basically it. Now if you feel that, that's incredibly tight, and you can keep working it. What I did do a couple times out there, I let it sit the way it is now to kind of take any stretch out of the cordage that there was, and I'd go back half an hour later, and I'd give it another crank, I'd give it another cinch just to get it really, really tight. Now we're not quite done here. Now this is good for temporary things, but if you want to really make it permanent, I want to make it so this line here cannot slip through that knot. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to tie another half hitch and work it down to lock this knot into place. Just like so. So that's your Canadian jam knot. We've got the half hitch at the top, the half hitch loop, and the half hitch locking knot. Incredibly useful knot. It's not going to come undone. The second knot I want to talk about in this video is called a lashing. Technically it's called a lashing, not a knot, but we're going to go with a knot, okay? Just for the ease of the video. So the projects I used a lashing for during my experience were three major ones. Number one, I used it to construct the frame of my teepee. And during my demonstration, I'm going to simulate that. I have these three bamboo poles, and I'm going to make a mini teepee exactly the same way I did when it was out there, just on a smaller scale. I also made a large tripod frame using this lashing for my smoker. And I made numerous tripod pot hangers to go over my fire, whether it was in my day use area or in my teepee or another part of the beach. I think I had 3 or 4 of them going, depending on where I had a fire. Super useful and an important knot to know if you're spending any time out in the bush. And if I had got a bear or if I had got a moose, some sort of large game, in my head I had a plan to make another large tripod big enough, tall enough, and strong enough to hang either the bear or the moose quarters off of while I skinned and processed the meat. This lashing begins with a clove hitch and ends with a clove hitch. So if you don't know how to tie a clove hitch, check it out. So we're going to go down, I don't know, about 4 inches from the top, and we're simply going to make an X like so. And loop back down around. And then go under this piece here. And a clove hitch when you're finished is your beautiful, tidy. All right, so we're remembering we're going to keep these 3 poles nice and flat. Okay, nice and flat. We're going to wrap around 4 times. Have my 4 wraps. Now what I'm going to do is called frapping. I'm going to wrap between these 2 poles and cinch down. Okay. So I'm going to come up. It's important not to cross. Okay. So I'm going to go up to the top here. And I'm going to cinch down tightly on the coils here, on the wraps, nice and tight. I'm going to do that twice for each space. I'm going to do the same to the next space. So we got 2 fraps. Now we're pretty much complete. All I have to do now is complete this by doing a clove hitch right here, okay? The final knot I want to talk about in this video is called the Fisherman's Knot, and I used it almost exclusively out there. If you've ever fished and if you've ever tied a fishing knot, this knot will most likely be the one you used. It's extremely common, it's very popular, and there's a reason for that. It's easy to tie, it cinches down nicely, and it maintains quite a bit of the line's original strength. The Fisherman's Knot, I'm going to demonstrate this knot with my key ring simulating the eyelet of a hook. So you simply put it through the hook. We're going to twist it about 5 or 6 times around the line going to your reel. Okay, so you'll notice at the bottom there's a loop by my finger. We're going to put this tag end here through that bottom loop. Okay, that's step 2. Now you'll see that I've created another loop here. I'm going to take this end, I'm going to put it through that loop like so. I'm going to cinch it down. Now with the monofilament line, it's much more slippery than this, but this is just for demonstration purposes. And you cinch it down like this. Okay. Now what's really important to remember with this knot is that it needs to cinch down correctly. I often moisten it with a bit of saliva or water, and have a look at it to make sure the coils are nice and neat, kind of like this one. Now before you fish with this, always give it a good test, give it a good pull, because sometimes these coils don't lay nicely, and when you apply pressure to the line, it can cut the line. So always test your fishing knots to make sure. This is the Fisherman's Knot. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. My name's Alan, this is Tent Outdoors. If you do like what you see, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, leaving a comment, all that stuff. We'll see you next time.